Blackhawks fans, welcome to another edition of the Four Feathers podcast. Cowboy, we were here last time, it was just you and I talking about Bo and Byram and the trade. And then we had Tony and our good friend Nick Newmeyer talk about the Bedard extension. I won't lie, though, Cowboy. I think we get to talk about the most fun one. Patrick Kane is back with the Chicago Blackhawks. Cowboy, first off, a happy early birthday to you.
Thank you.
And secondly, man, I mean, just let's get into it. How you feeling?
I feel like this was one of the greatest birthday gifts I think I've ever received. And just saying that Patrick Kane is Chicago Blackhawk once again, and it's still surreal. Waking up in the morning, seeing that post, and seeing it from Freeman, and then you're like, "Oh, this is actually like real." And he's just one of those guys that when you talk about Mount Rushmore, 2010s hockey, the Blackhawks, he's like one of the first guys you're going to think of. I think he's more of an icon than Mikita, and it sounds like he's going to have the last 2 years of his career in Chicago, based on what his agent Pat Brisson said. So, see him retire as a Hawk, especially when you've seen guys like Chelios and I think Savard spent his last year away, and Hall and all these guys like retire away from the team. Seeing a guy like Kane come back, it's going to be nice.
It's going to be really cool to see. And, it's funny that you mentioned that. You mentioned kind of the Mount Rushmore of Blackhawks. And I did this exercise the other day. My dad and I were talking pre the signing and just like the what ifs if Kane comes back. And pretty much statistically speaking, he's going to finish either number 2 or number 3 in just about every statistical category.
Yeah.
The only guy he's not going to catch is Mikita. And that's just because Mikita played for the Hawks for too long.
Yeah, like 20 years or something.
Yeah, over 1,400 games, tons of crazy numbers with the Hawks. So, even though Kane's career totals look more like Mikita's, obviously there's a few years in there where he was away from the team. So, overall, though, I mean, you can make the argument easily, just statistically speaking, he's one of the top 3 Blackhawks of all time. He's going to continue to add to that legacy now here in these next 2 years with, the next wave of Blackhawks playing alongside him, Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar, Anton Frondel, etc. A quick shout out, Cowboy, before we keep pushing this thing forward. Our good friends over at Obvious Shirts have released a Showtime 88 t-shirt, and it's really cool because within the fine print of the 88, it says Showtime is back in all little letters. And
that's awesome.
It creates the pattern. Go check it out at obvious_shirts on X if you're an X merchant. If not, just go to obviousshirts.com and you can check that out. And then you can go and use promo code ONTAPSports when you check out and save 10%. So quick shout out to our good friends over at Obvious Shirts. And I know I'm going to be buying one of those probably as soon as we get off this show, Cowboy. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And this is maybe the favorite part. Now, I don't know about you, Cowboy.
There it is.
I have continued to wear my black Patrick Kane jersey, especially last season with the return of the black uniforms.
Those are so nice.
Have continued to wear it even when he wasn't with the team. Now it just has even further purpose. But as Stuart says here in the comments, it's time to dust the Kane jersey out of the closet. I mean, this is Cowboy. I wrote the article this morning, and it was such a fun article to write because I almost effectively just woken up. So this was just raw, pure emotion off the top of my brain. And I said, there are a few things in this city that can shake a fan base in terms of excitement, let alone an entire city. Number 88 coming back to Chicago.
It's surreal because, I mean, every Blackhawks fan woke up and immediately, like, paused their day for the rest of the day. It's pretty much a holiday at this point because it's one of those things that, like, we've been telling ourselves the past few years, always going to come back, never fully serious. And then you hear, Connor Bedard during his extension presser. Then you have Kyle Davidson going on the score, Kyle Davidson going on TSN. He's like, yeah, Kane is welcome back anytime you want. And you're thinking like, well, maybe this is actually going to happen. And then I was saying this in our room when we were talking about it, but each day that went on, it felt like the chance that Chicago would sign him it would just keep growing because the only way that he would choose Chicago over Buffalo is he really missed Chicago. 'Cause Buffalo
Mhm.
wouldn't be able to pay him as much, but he's gonna have a chance to win. It's his hometown team. But you just kind of felt that, like, as Buffalo couldn't afford him, as they kept moving this along, Chicago, obviously you're paying him $8 million a year. We'll get to that, but
That helps.
it helps, and it worked. It really worked.
It sure did. Yeah, Kane, and for those that haven't maybe seen it, it's a 2-year deal, $8 million average annual value. I think that's still a little poetic. I know everybody wanted the 8.8 million or the 4.4, so it was a total of 8.8 million. It's 2/8 is the way to think about it.
Yeah.
2 $8 million years. So he still gets that worked in, and it's also a full no movement clause for Patrick Kane. So this is not come back here. If you play really well, we'll ship you back to a contender to try to go win again. This is
This
you
is
are
like
finishing your career as a Blackhawk. Unless you decide to play an age 41 season, which if you God love you, because that's
yeah.
incredible. If he plays that long. Cowboy, before we talk a little bit about the kind of dynamics I think that this brings to the team, because obviously there's so many ramifications, how the lineup looks, etc.
Yep.
I think Easy Jim is a great question here in our comment section. Do you think Patrick Kane is going to wear an A?
Yes. I don't think as much as the city respects him and loves him, and as much as some people, partially including myself, would love to give him the C, I think the only reason this got done is because Kyle Davidson feels confident enough in the young guys to take over the leadership group. And, maybe that just starts with Vlasic and Bedard, and then you can work in Nazar later, which I think is fine because I think giving Kane an A, um, you kind of blend the two eras. You give Bedard the C and you give Kane the A, and Bedard can also just learn from Kane how to be a leader while wearing the C and representing his team because at the end of the day, it's going to be a change in the guard. And we're going to have to keep that in mind as excited as we are now that this is still Bedard's team and that Bedard is still going to be the name come November when he comes back. It's going to put the butts in the seats. So I think he's only going to get an A. And I say only because it is Patrick Kane, right?
Yeah,
But I don't think they leave him without a letter. I think there had to be some discussion going into the contract, through the contract.
yeah.
So I think he gets the A, and I think that's perfect for where this team is at and where Kane is at.
I agree. I think you nailed it on the head, Cowboy. I don't have much to add there. I think you put it eloquently. The changing of the guard. The reason this works is because the young guys took over, and I've said the same thing in private discussions in our rooms when we've been talking. This is exactly, I think, how most people feel. Like Bedard's going to get the C at some point this summer.
Yeah.
I think what's going to be fun though, Cowboy, is because naturally when your captain is hurt, there's a third A on the ice. So it's going to be fun to see who kind of that third A becomes, at least while Bedard is off.
Yeah.
Whether that's maybe it is Nazar, maybe it's Vlasic. I think in agreement. I believe it was Chief over at Barstool that said his prediction for the leadership group is Bedard wearing the C, Kane wearing an A, and Bowen Byram wearing an A. And I think that's very respectable because you just signed him as your franchise defenseman. So I do believe that's going to potentially happen. I'm really intrigued to see who that third A though is because I do think it's between Frank Nazar and Alex Vlasic.
It's going to be interesting because it sounds already like Bertuzzi's not really going to have his next year, even though he had one down the stretch.
And
so
mind you, don't mean to intersect, but like for the people that are generally listening and are like, well, isn't that like a slap in the face? Brent Seabrook didn't wear an A for how long, but every single guy on those cup teams said he was just as important as a leader as the guys that wore A's.
Yeah,
just because you don't wear a letter doesn't mean you can't be a leader in the room.
Exactly. It's exactly that. And so I really think I could see Byram if I don't know what goes on in the locker room, right? But I feel like you look at a guy like Vlasic, Chicago kid, been with the team the longest, which is crazy to think about.
That is crazy.
And so he's been a defensive anchor, right? And he's kind of had the job of mentoring these younger guys. I would give him the A, but like I said, I'm not in the locker room. I'm not with the team. So, but that's just me. But either way, I feel like that third A is going to be interesting. they could go younger with it. That way, it
Mhm.
doesn't feel like a slap in the face. Because if you give it to a guy like Nazar compared to Vlasic, and then you take it away, it's two completely different reactions, in my opinion. So, but
Mm,
it's just for us to find out and see. And that's part of the
definitely.
fun of this signing is it's a
Yeah.
big leader stepping into the room.
And I think that's great analysis too, on the sense of, Vlasic has kind of been around and he's unofficially kind of been put a little bit more in the spotlight as one of the older guys, which is crazy to think that he's considered like a quote unquote older guy on this roster at 25 years old. God forbid.
Yes.
I mean, it makes me feel ancient at this point in my life. But I do agree with you. I think it would not tarnish, but certainly hurt a little bit more for a guy like Vlasic to lose that
Yeah.
A then rather than maybe a Frank Nazar who, hey man, we're going to give you a chance to wear a letter, understanding that like you're maybe 2 years away from wearing it full time,
Yeah.
and we'll see. And of course, there's other injuries that happen too. Like other guys are going to potentially wear A's. You mentioned how Bertuzzi got his A. A lot of that helps with guys being hurt, and then of course trades happen. We've seen it over the years. Dickinson getting the A. It happens, right?
Yeah.
We've seen it time and time
I
again.
mean, I think was it Tyler? No, not Tyler Johnson. There was another Martinez. Martinez and Maroon were wearing A's at one point.
Yep, they sure
Very
were.
odd. Like,
Yeah, just so many guys were hurt in the
yeah.
leadership group. I mean, I still remember back in the day when I think it was Sharp missed a bunch of games, and I think Seabrook missed a couple games, and that was like the first year that like Hossa wore a letter. So
Yes.
that happened a
They
couple
skipped.
times
I
too.
remember I was younger, and I remember why would they skip Kane again? And I remember oh yeah, he punched a taxi driver only 4 years before.
Yeah,
That would be
well,
why.
it's one of those things to certainly keep in mind. Cowboy, I do have one other thing here before we get to the nuts and bolts of where in the lineup Kane's going to play and things of that nature. I know you've seen it because I saw you quote tweeted already on X. How sweet was it? The video that the Blackhawks put out, him arriving in the building, stepping onto the ice in Hawks gear already, and just already soaking in being a Blackhawk once again. I mean, how cool is that? Because it's one thing when you see the graphic and everybody talks about it, but then it's another thing when they're like, yeah, he's got all of his practice gear already. It's all got number 88 on it already. Like he's back. He's back in the building. There's probably already a locker stall for him. It's all set now in the UC and in their practice arena where he's in the building. He's there. He was there just a few hours ago skating and working with Vinny Hinostroza and some of the other guys that skate in Chicago locally in the summertime.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but shout out the 2017 Vinny Hinostroza Patrick Kane charity game at Fox Valley Ice Arena, Geneva, Illinois. Shout that out. Never forget that moment. That was my home rink growing up.
Yeah.
So it's like that. Like when he signed, that was the first thing I remember was that.
Vinny.
But continue. I'm sorry.
Good old Vinny Hinostroza. No, that video is so fun to watch because you see all the other guys in their other uniforms, right? Like guys that just call Chicago home during the summer that come and skate here. Hinostroza is certainly one of those. I'm sure Hartman makes his passes through sometimes. There's tons of dudes that skate in this group in Chicago, and Kane has done it habitually over the last few years.
He did it. He was there earlier this offseason before he signed.
In Red Wings gear, which looks stupid. But now all is right in the world because he's back in Hawks gear. He's got his practice jersey. That I think, Cowboy, I don't know about you, that was like the first moment where it really felt like truly real. It was like, oh, there he is. There he is. Like he's in the city right now, wearing his gear again and back in the swing of things.
It was so surreal. And it's because it's that fact that I had never really known. I'm a younger guy, obviously, so I never really known a Hawks team without Kane, and so to see him back in the gear that I had only really remember watching the Blackhawks with Kane and Tays, and so to see him in that gear coming back, I mean, I'm tearing up right now, and I was tearing up a little because it's something it's that nostalgia. Mike Bartner called it nostalgia slop. I have issues with that. He's just mad that John Tavares will never choose the Islanders again.
Fact.
But man, seeing Kane in those walking through the building and putting on that Blackhawks jersey, and like you said, it hits you. You're like, well, this is actually happening. This is real. This isn't Twitter GM. This is official, and it's just there's something about that.
It's a real deal, man. Speaking of Jonathan Taves, did you see his quote as well in a text exchange with, I believe it was Mark Lazarus, of just how jealous he is that Patrick
Yeah,
Kane
he
is
did. I think
the
he said
Blackhawks
word
again.
for word. I bookmarked it because I wanted to read it later.
It's a good one. It's a good quote, man. It's a good quote. I think if I remember, he said I congratulate him, and I'm so happy for him. I'm just really jealous that he gets to play for the
Yeah.
Blackhawks again.
I mean, here he said we were texting, and as happy as I am for him, I told him that I'm straight up jealous that he's going to play for the Hawks again.
It's cool. It's cool, man.
And I feel like that quote goes a long ways with people saying, like, obviously now it doesn't mean anything, but people for years were saying that Taves and Kane hated this org and this org hated them. Like there was bad blood between the two. At the higher levels they were saying that.
Sure.
So it was like it's really cool to see Taze come out and kind of say that. And we were talking jokingly about like who knows, maybe he comes back too, and we'll just do like a full reunion. That'd be cool. But I mean,
Full reunion tour.
it's cool to get Kane back. And Davidson also said that until they knew Taze was retiring, they didn't really pursue Kane because it would have been kind of like a slap in the face to bring back Kane while Taze is still a free agent, right? So it was just like a perfect mix that brought Kane back, and to see all these alumni, not in the sense like where these Twitter trolls are like, yeah, everyone hates Kane and Taze at the higher ups, Faulkner, Davidson, all of that, right? So it's really cool to see, that Taze quote and be like, wow, like, I mean, that's just really cool. It's cool.
It is really cool. This is a funny comment. I'm glad this was brought up from Stuart here in the comment section. It says, "Get Sodden for another stint."
You know what?
Did you see Paul Conroy posted a picture
Yes.
of Brandon Sod?
And do you know what? One of my favorite players of all time is Brandon Sod.
He's one of mine as well.
I love Brandon Sod. I was kind of rooting for Vegas just a little bit in the Stanley Cup final solely for the fact that Brandon Sod was on that team.
He'd get another.
I love Brandon Sod. I would rather have him than Jordan Greenway, honestly.
I'm a Brandon Sod truther, Cowboy. I know we haven't known each other as long, but my ties go long back to Sod. I still remember the day he was traded to Columbus. I was at work that day, and I had work till 5, and he got traded at like 4:00 in the afternoon. I literally did nothing for the last hour at work. I just sat there and moped. I was so sad that he was gone.
I was so excited. I remember reading, like my dad and me were like talking, and then we saw the news that Sod got traded to Chicago, and we got really excited. And then we found out it was for Panarin, and we got really upset. But for those 3.5 minutes that we thought it was Sod coming back, man, oh man, we were
elated.
We were elated, and then we found out the package, and that was sobering, to say the least.
Yeah, that was a very. I remember that day. Still remember that day. I was sitting inside a Red Lobster when those trades happened because that was the same day that Jalmerson went too. And
was that the day of the draft or before the draft? I can never remember.
I think it was the day before. If I remember,
I think it was because I think
it might have been. You know what? It might have actually been the day of.
It was either the day of or day before. I
think it was the day of because I think it was
at this point.
I think it was a Friday. Yeah, I think it was a Friday. So it was. I think the day of the first round.
Okay,
was when those trades happened.
Either way,
that would have been in
27. It was 17. It was
2017.
17 going into 18 because
then it was before the draft. Then because I attended the draft when it was in Chicago in 2017.
I did too. I went day one.
I went day one and day two. We went like a bunch of sickos on day two, man. Like it was just nobody knows anybody's name, and it was just whatever. It was totally.
I was like, I went. I was a kid at the time. I was still pretty young, so I like didn't really stick around too much like during the actual draft. But I remember they were doing that promotion where like a select number of tickets got to meet Brian Campbell, and so we had our tickets and we were scanning them online, and the fourth ticket, which was my mom's ticket, was the ticket that got us to meet Brian Campbell. So there's a picture.
That's awesome.
Of little cowboy with Brian Campbell but right after he retired and before he was hired by the Hawks,
That's
which
awesome.
is really cool.
That is really cool. That's a fun little piece of Blackhawks Cowboy lore to share here today. All right, Cowboy, let's get into it. Let's get into the nuts and bolts.
Let's go. Let me pull up Buckpedia. All right.
I have sat here and probably even before Kane signed, just the gymnastics of wondering where he would play.
Yeah.
I find it very hard to think, unless just that's how they want it. I almost wonder if Kane doesn't play with Bedard initially.
I've heard that. I think after the initial, oh my God, this is happening, I've heard a lot of buzz that it's going to be Kane Frondell.
I think that's the moneymaker because of Frondel's shot.
I think so too. And I think
they're really sold
open up Bedard.
Bedard.
Exactly. Bedard with Kanserov, you open that up. But you don't put as much pressure on Kanserov because let's say he has a bad game. Well, you can just flip him if you really need to.
Absolutely.
And you still give Kanserov very good minutes with a very good player in Frondell. So I think you run Frondell Kane for as long as you can take it. And then you slot Bedard back into that center spot and you keep what would be line one intact apart from Bertuzzi, and you just move that down to line two. But now, I mean, who's going to play left wing? Honestly,
that might be the better question. Yeah, that might be the better question.
You have Bertuzzi line one, and it's going to be Bertuzzi, Frondell, and Kane to start the year most likely. Very good line one. Not great, but it's solid,
strong.
So Bedard comes back. You have probably Bertuzzi, Bedard, Kanserov line one. And now you have Kane, Frondell, Green, Teravainen, Donato. I mean,
I think they're gonna have to play
maybe more Lardis, but I've heard that Lardis could be starting in the AHL again. So you
that would be kind of crazy to see too.
Yeah.
I think a perfect case scenario, the way I look at it, if you're playing, let's say it's the doubles, right? Or the pairs, as Davidson's talked about a little bit this offseason, right? Kanserov, Bedard, and Kane and Frondell. I sit there and say, at that point, maybe, just maybe, Ryan Green and Tyler Bertuzzi probably are your best options, strictly for the standpoint of who's going to go into the corners, right? Who's going to dig pucks out? You kind of need that guy on every line. Back in the day, it was, like Hossa, Taves, and Saad all did it, right? But even when Kane was playing with guys, like Kane would play with Saad a lot because of that reason. Kane would play with Patrick Sharp a little bit sometimes because of that reason, because Sharp was willing to kind of go into the corners. I think they're going to need that guy on those two lines. I could see Ryan Donato getting a cup of coffee up there potentially as well, and especially maybe early on with Bedard too, and from a draw standpoint, just another guy that's a lefty that can take a draw. I really wonder how they're going to construct that left wing spot really in the top six. I think both left wing spots in the top six are fascinating because you've got your right wingers sifted out now with Kane and Kanserov. You have your centers sifted out. Where does Frank Nazar play? Is he your third line center? Is he one of those two left wingers?
My best lineup would be Bertuzzi, Bedard, Kanserov, Kane, Frondell, and then either one of Moore or Nazar. I think Moore can go into the corners for you. I mean,
definitely.
The way he hurt his leg was literally he went full speed into the corner and he got an assist on that play. I mean, people do not give, because he's a little bit of a smaller guy to be your corners guy, but he's still 6'1", 180. I mean, he's strong too.
Yeah,
pound for pound. So I wouldn't mind him in that left wing spot. And then you have Frondell too, to
be a
go
big
into the corners behind the net, because he's a big boy, right? He's 6'3", 210. So that would be my best lineup. But
I think the question that ends up happening, or in my brain, is really just Who do you value more as a center, Oliver Moore or Frank Nazar?
I think that's got to be the question too. And the way I see it, I think Nazar's the better player, but I think as a third line center, Moore is very solid.
I think Moore's the better fit.
Yeah.
I also
And
think he just plays better at center because he's able to utilize his speed to open up the middle of the ice a little bit.
Exactly.
And that all of a sudden that makes that third line look really good if it's, if it's a combination of Nick Lardis, Oliver Moore, and maybe Teuvo Teravainen.
That's
It's a very defensively responsible
I had
line.
line 2 going into this year prior to all the moves we made. Nazar, Moore, Lardis. That was my line 2, and then Frondell was going to be on the wing. But obviously, we brung in Cancer from Russia. We've gotten Kane, so everything could shift a little bit. But I mean, I think those are two guys. I really like Moore's game. I'm still iffy on Lardis. I think he can be a very good finisher, but to have his own line, kind of to be like the vocal point of that third line, is still a little bit too much.
Yeah, so. I think I will say with Lardis, I think him and Moore had a very clear chemistry at the times that they did play with one another.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed watching that. I think there's something to be had from that. And I think especially if you put Teuvo on that wing because of his two-way game ability, he's a very defensively responsible winger. I think you can let Lardis just be Lardis. And then Oliver Moore and Teuvo Teravainen can make up for a lot of the maybe defensive deficiencies that I think a lot of people are worried about right now with Nick Lardis in terms of his full game. And then you bring a little bit of a scoring punch to your third line. Because I also think, I know we're getting a little bit away from Patrick Kane here as we go down the lineup, but I think that fourth line of potentially Ryan Donato, Jordan Greenway, and Cole Smith is going to be not only fun, but also a very respectable fourth line. And it's been a while since the Blackhawks.
That's a fourth line. I mean, you're talking about Greenway was on Buffalo, and then Cole Smith was on Vegas.
Yeah.
And Donato was a second and third liner last year. So it's not the worst fourth line in the world. For what they do, for the roles they filled, they're very good at it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's what they need is a line that's going to roll out there,
start making identity, and then as you work towards the future, you can get guys like Spellacy towards the end of this year, maybe Boisvert, now that he's gained almost 20 pounds of muscle.
He looked big.
Yeah, he apparently went from like 190, 185 to 205, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's an insane transformation in one off season.
Yeah.
A couple quick comments here. Windy City Hockey. So happy Kaner's home. And he says Moore plays better as a center than a winger. Center suits Moore's game well. And I agree wholeheartedly.
I think that's where I'm at, where Nazar's a bit too skilled to be playing on the third line also.
Yeah. In the same argument, though, Nazar is good enough in terms of offensive ability where you saw it at times late last season. Like he kind of he can kind of carry his own line, right? Yeah. Offensively speaking. Like that was something that the Blackhawks always loved about Brandon Saad.
I think too, we have to think about is I would rather have Nazar than Frondell at center. I think Frondell is more of a natural winger. And that's how he's been most of his youth career and then his professional career in the SHL. He was always a winger. And it's not until now that he's really being utilized as a center. Yeah. So I'm not knocking Nazar's play, but I think in terms of pure centers, Moore might be our best pure center in terms of defensive ability, face-offs, his breakouts. Like Bedard's fine, but if I had to throw someone in to win a face-off, Moore would be at the top of that list, honestly.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think Oliver Moore he brings so much to the center room. And again, I also think they have enough guys that can play center. That you can have some of that, that moving around a little bit of the lineup. Things can get a little weird. What they're going to roll out on September 29th against the Vegas Golden Knights.
It's going to be completely different. The other thing, I'm not saying they're going to do this, but if push truly comes to shove, Roman Kanserov played center half the year in the KHL. We have guys everywhere in the lineup that can play center. Yeah. Not saying they will play center, not saying they're going to be utilized as center in the future, but they can. Kanserov did it. Frondel's done it. Nazer's done it. Moore's done it. Bedard's done it. So in that regard, there's a lot of flexibility in this lineup with these younger guys.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, on top of it, like when you have like this is the complete opposite problem the Blackhawks had during the Cup years. They had too many wingers and they were trying to find people to play center.
Yeah.
And now they have too many centers and they have to find wingers,
find players,
which is way easier to do. Like
Yeah.
it's way easier to take centers and put them out on the wing than the other way around. So it's a great problem to have. And then again,
Yeah.
no matter who's playing center on the second line, the good chance they're probably playing with Patrick Kane, who
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are like, well, you know, what does his production look like? And this guy's coming off a 57-point season in only 67 games. I mean, that's still elite production at 37 years old.
Very much so. And people are saying, "Oh, he's going to suck." Oh, like he's got flaws. He's a 38-year-old hockey player who's never known for his defense.
No,
but
that's not what he's here to do.
The idea of him playing with a guy like Nazer on the other ring, or even like Green, where he can kind of pick up that slack along the boards, because you're utilizing Kane for the fact that you've never had a true playmaker for any of your young players. Bedard's been all alone. Nazer's been all alone. Frondel had to play with Mikheyev on line 2. Not knocking Mikheyev, but Mikheyev's going to be a third or fourth line guy for the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's simply you never had a playmaker, and you pass on Demidov, and now you have Kane, and people are saying this was a bad sign. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I think what Kane's going to bring to this, especially this power play, we're going to touch on it later, I'm sure. But Kane brings a dynamic playmaking to whoever he plays with that we have not seen in this new era, apart from Bedard. And then you're able to match one of Nazer and Kane, or Nazer and Bedard, or like you can mix and match now. You have the flexibility to do that.
Definitely. And let's start to open that can of worms that you just mentioned with the power play, because I look at this and I've already seen the predictions out there. A shout out to my longtime, I'll call him a friend. I think he's a friend. I hope he thinks I'm a friend. Longtime friend of mine, Mr. Mario Tirabassi over at CHGO. And a couple people were asking him, hey, what do you think is a point projection for Patrick Kane? And he was saying like 58 points. I think that's assuming he plays 82 games. I sit back and look at this team and I say, if Patrick Kane gives you anything above 50 points, that's a huge success in my brain.
Yeah.
Huge success. Because if Patrick Kane gives you over 50 points, just think back to last year's team. You had 2 players that had over 50 points last year on this Blackhawks team. It was Tyler Bertuzzi and it was Connor Bedard. And that's it. Frank Nazar was your third highest scorer in the 40s. So brutal. A 50-point season from Patrick Kane means a handful of things. One, they're scoring a hell of a lot more goals because you have a third 50-point player added to a team from a season ago. And 2, to your point, Cowboy, the power play is going to be drastically improved. I remember the early years of the Connor Bedard experiment where the power play couldn't even get into the zone. There were games where they would just be stuck in the neutral zone because teams just knew where the puck was going.
Because it was literally, I mean, when you think about how much this team has come, because we had Tyler Johnson and Cole Gutman as a first power play unit. Juju Kara and who used to be running there? Which defenseman? Oh, it's going to drive me insane. But like, man, this team has come so far, because I could be high on this, but Bedard, Kane, Frondel, Nazer, Byram, that's pretty nasty. That's pretty sick.
And you know what's crazy too? Think about this, Cowboy, and this is how I'm starting to mentally think about it a little bit. I think Frondel's shot is his best weapon.
Yes.
I think there's a world. And we also know that Kanserov knows how to play the bumper role on the power play. And he's talked about it already in some of his interviews. Your first power play, in theory, just for shits and giggles in a world, could be Kanserov at the bumper, Bertuzzi is your net front presence, and then Bedard and Kane on the wings with Byram at the point. And then you have Frondell and Nazar, who can be on your second unit. And now all of a sudden, for the first time since this team was winning Stanley Cups, you could have 2 power play units that are actually worth something.
They're actually good. Yeah. I mean, think about just in the 1 year, we had Teuvo Teravainen, at one point Jason Dickinson, at another point Nick Foligno, all last season on the power play. Not for extended periods, but there was games where all 3 of those guys, especially Teravainen, were playing on power play 1.
Yep.
That's kind of sickening to think about. I'm kind of sick thinking about that. And not like a good sick, like a physically ill, wow.
I want to throw up, yeah.
And now we have a power play quarterback in Byram,
Yep.
right? Where he ran PP2 for Buffalo, which is, I would consider one of the better PP2s in the league.
Yeah.
Especially in the playoffs. But you have Byram running the power play. You have Bedard and you have Kane setting him up. And like you said, I think you can go either Kanserov or Nazar, depending on how confident you are. But I think the other thing we need to talk about is the first part of the year, too. That power play is going to be so good.
Even
because you opened it up. This Kane signing brings so much. This is going to be the first year, apart from like the first half of last year, where we're going to be like fun bad. I'm projecting like around like a 75-point season for us. Still lottery, still probably close to the top 5, if not top 5. But it's not going to feel like it. Like last year was draining to write about, to watch. I don't think we're ever going to be in the doldrums of the season that bad with this lineup. I think it's going to be really fun. And I think that if Knight can play like how he played in the first half, we could be looking at meaningful games in March and February for the first time since 2019, I would say. Because even in 2020, we were like 3 or 4 games away from being eliminated from the playoffs. They mostly just did the 12 seed because they wanted the Blackhawks in there and the Canadians in there because they're big markets. But for the first time since 2018-19, we're going to be competitive in the very least. And considering what we were 3 years ago, I'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah, properly competitive is, and again, especially for people that are like, well, you know, this Blackhawks team needs to improve and they need to get better. That's very tangible improvement. And then the even more fun part, Cowboy, you and I were talking a little bit about this before the show because there's a lot of people that don't like the Kane contract. Next season, they go from, what'd you say it was now? $3 million or $2 million right now?
This is very important. I don't want to get this wrong, so I'm going to literally read it off. We have $2.827 million with $93 remaining also, right? So 2.82793. Next season, we have $42,980,426 in cap space.
And that's with Bedard, Kane, Nazar, Donato, Byram, Knight. Some of your key pieces already under contract on that number.
The main things we would have to worry about are guys like Moore, Rinzel, Lechnov. They're all going to hit their RFA, but they haven't really done anything. There's a reason why we got them to their 10 games and we burned a year. It's because we're going to get them for cheap now. I don't think a single one of those guys is going to make over $5 million for the next
not on the next contract. I agree.
There's no way.
I think the only way,
unless you can get it for like 4 years, maybe.
Yeah.
I doubt that though.
And I think the only one that maybe has a chance to do that is Moore, because I think if Moore comes out this year and has like a 40-point season, I think he could, like, and especially if he's willing to take term, kind of like Nazar did.
Yeah,
I could see a world where maybe Moore gets a little over.
If Moore has a 40-point season, I would give him close to Nazar. Like, I would give him $5 million if he can get 40 points.
Yeah,
because he's still super young, and he was never really picked for his super high offensive ceiling. I've always compared him to a Carl Hagelin, and let me just go in here and
that's a good, fun comp.
Yeah.
And Carl Hagelin was a damn good pro for a long time.
He was he was never super offensively like a dynamo, but his highest scoring season was 35 points, and he played in the NHL for 11, 12 years. And his highest scoring season was 35 points. And if Moore can get to 40 next year, yes, yeah, sign him for 20 years. I don't care because that'll be such a good outcome for Moore if he can get to half a point per game.
For sure. Yeah. Wow, that is crazy to think. That Carl Hagelin's highest total in a season was 38 points. Wow.
But the playoff Carl Hagelin had 16 points.
Yeah.
That
He was
first
a
year in
dynamo.
Pittsburgh. Yeah.
I will say this too. I think a lot of people forget about Carl Hagelin. You mentioned that first year in one of those, that first year in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I
56.
mean, before he got hurt, he had 27 points in 37 games. So,
He was
I mean, even if that's what you're thinking of, like, long-term upside, and I think Moore might have more offensive prowess than Carl Hagelin did.
I think just the way the game is now, he does because the offensive skill set of the average NHLer 10 years ago was not good. Just frankly, we were not in a good spot in the sport with that kind of stuff. Obviously, your Crosbys and Ovechkins, but like,
Yeah. Your
it's,
high-end skill was there.
yeah, it's completely different, I would say. And I think more just what he brings. If he was a very solid penalty killer before he got hurt. And I think people are sleeping on the fact before he got hurt, he had like 3 points in 5 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yes, his point totals don't look great, but Carl Hagelin's point totals don't look great. And he's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. And he's considered one of the best penalty killers to ever play in the league.
Yeah.
Because of his speed, because of his grit. And like we mentioned with Moore is not the biggest guy, but he plays hard. And Hagelin's only 6 foot 180, and Moore is 6 foot 180.
And
something to think about.
You've also heard from some pretty reputable players in the NHL, Matthew Tkachuk, for example, about how much he likes Oliver Moore and how much he thinks he's going to be a player for a long time. So I'll tell you what, man, I think what really this comes down to is, even with this being an older Patrick Kane, even with the nostalgia of the return, it dramatically deepens the lineup by just adding one guy with this much skill as a playmaker to that top 6. And I think this is what kind of fans were hoping for. They were like, just give us that one guy that you can look at and say, yeah, maybe he's not going to be the 100-point guy, that is going to rule the league, but a guy that can come in and be a competent addition to the top 6 with some veteran leadership. And you get 2 of those, but you also get to bring Patrick Kane home. And that's what makes it even more fun.
I think when you look at what Bedard's done with players he's played with in his career, Nick Foligno was a 40-point guy. Philip Kurashev was a 50-point guy. Ryan Donato had 60 points. Tyler Bertuzzi had his best career year. I think he had 33 goals, 35 goals.
32 goals, but yeah.
32 goals. That's with nobody. Respectfully to those guys, none of them are really considered top sixers at the time they came to the Blackhawks and the time they were playing with the Blackhawks.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Kane was still a top 6 player for a Detroit team that was pretty much held back by their own incompetence at GM.
That should have been a playoff team.
Who knows what the outcome of this season, not just for the team, but for Bedard as a player, to have that responsibility taken off his shoulders a little bit by Kane, where now you have a guy who's also a threat on the power play, especially that they play together on the lineup. I mean, it's the way that this can highlight Bedard. I think Bedard is going to be the year that he hits 100 points easily. Easily hits 100 points. I think he's going to have 45 goals. We can book it now.
I like it. I like it a lot. I'll tell you what, I thought Bedard, maybe not so much post injury, but definitely pre injury. I was feeling this was going to be the 100-point year.
He was on track, and I think
he was on track to be a top 5 league scorer.
What also happens with, and people forget this, is that he came back. Trade deadline happened. Nazar was still hurt, and he had to play with post injury Burakovsky.
Yeah.
I think post-injury Burakovsky, you can only do so much as a player when your line mate, it has 3 points in 34 games. It's still such an insane stat that this guy was playing with Connor Bedard, who was over a point per game, who was on pace. He still was on pace for 91, 92 points. And you have 3 points in 34 games. And then your other winger is Ryan Green. And to my point of what I was making earlier, we've seen what he can do to mediocre players. He could even do that with Ryan Green and Andre Burakovsky. That's how dire this situation had become. So I think this year is going to be, we say make or break every year, but you kind of feel like it's time to put up or shut up for a lot of these players, and for Kyle Davidson, because, like, God forbid, Moore flames out. Nazar is still inconsistent. Bedard is still not the same player, and he gets hurt. God forbid, right? But now the rebuild kind of sucks. And no matter what this Kane signing brings, if no one else does their job, Kane can't do his, like we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, what happens? But that is worst case scenario, which is not going to happen because Bedard's going to hit 100 points.
I like it. I like the optimism. I like the breakdown as well, Cowboy. I'm going to turn it quickly back to you, man. I mean, final thoughts about Patrick Kane's reunion with the Chicago Blackhawks.
I think that at 9:21, I woke up this morning, and at 9:24, I had put on the good old 88. And I think that this is the most optimistic first season I felt in a while. Even last year, I didn't really have the same juice. I thought the team was still going to suck. I would say since 2017-18, when we saw that, or was it 2018-19? Which year was it that Saad scored the hat trick to start off the season against Pittsburgh? That was 18-19.
That might have been 17-18.
No, because 17-18 he was still in Columbus, so I think it was 18-19. It was like a year. It was the year after we missed the playoffs for the first time. That was the most excited I've been about a team until now, because yes, it's Kane. Yes, you can call it nostalgia slap. You can call it whatever you want, but it's going to be fun. We're going to suck because of the parity of the NHL, and this team is just not there yet. It's not a finished product, but it's going to be so much more fun to watch hockey. I am so excited for it. Ron?
I think there's a real chance that this team exceeds a lot of expectations. I really do. And I think it's ultimately just shy of a playoff berth, but it's going to be close. I kind of equate, I think this is the year now where I equate this team to that first year when Dennis Savard was head coach, where they just missed the playoffs. Yeah. It was like 3 or 4 points that they missed by.
Was it 07? It was 07-08. Yes, because 08-09. Yeah.
07-08. So, like, that's kind of what this team gives me a little bit of vibes towards. It's like, okay, you got some pieces now, like, right? That was the first year Brian Campbell.
That was the Kane and Tays, like, second year.
That was their rookie year. That was their rookie year.
Both of them rookie year, or
both of them. They're both rookies.
Oh yeah, you're right, because
Tays went back to UND for another year. Yeah. So I mean, this kind of gives, like, that's kind of the expectation I have for this team. It's like I really do think, Cowboy, if you go to a game down in your neck of the woods when the Hawks are in town.
Oh yeah. April,
or even
out John Mustard, Vaslav Nestrashil, AJ Spelcy, Sasha Boisvert. I'm just saying, the April game in Dallas, going to be so much fun. I cannot wait for it.
And I'll tell you what, man, I think the games that people attend in March, they're going to mean something this year.
Yes.
This is not going to be a Blackhawks team that's out of it. And a good friend, Tom Marchese, yes, directly related. This is Tony's brother. He says a healthy Blackhawks team in the first half of last season was very different than what we saw post-Olympic break. Excited to add Kane to that team, especially once Bedard does return. And I agree wholeheartedly. I think you saw what this team can do at full strength. You saw what this team was starting to build, and they got really derailed. And I think last season it's one that, in my opinion, I have a hard time criticizing as hard as some other people, because it was an abnormal schedule.
Yeah.
They played so much hockey in such a short amount of time because of the Olympic break. And none of these young players knew how to play a full season, let alone a full season that was already energized on steroids because of how much hockey you played in a short amount of time. Now it's an 84-game season. The schedule's much more spread out. You have a regular All-Star weekend this year, so there's only a small break in between.
Speaking of that, we'll get to that, but
I really do. I think as long as this team what put besides Bedard, because that injury has already happened, there's nothing we can change. As long as the majority of the rest of the roster can stay relatively healthy, like guys aren't missing 10 plus game stretches, they could fuck around and really make, if they're not going to be a potential playoff team, they're at least going to really piss some other teams off late in the year that need these 2 points against the Hawks, and they're not going to be able to get them.
I think a more recent comparable was Anaheim 2 seasons now.
Yes.
Where they had like 78 points and the wild card was like 90, where yes, there was still a clear tier, but there was also a big tier between them and then San Jose and then Chicago.
Yeah.
And then Columbus. Right?
I agree. Like
so,
they're going to be close.
We talked about the All-Star game. I think, personally, with the return of it, what would be really cool, and I may be fanboying a little bit here, but to see Kane, if he goes and Bedard goes, and Kane comes down to Superman and puts the Superman onto Kane like Hossa did to Kane all those years ago.
Oh, and puts it on
Bedard in the shootout.
That would be cool.
That's a little fanboyish, but that would be
okay. Sick. This is the place to be.
This is the place to talk about it.
This is the place to put it out into the universe and see what can come. I'll tell you what, Cowboy. I think we speak for ourselves, but I think we speak for a lot of people as well. The excitement in Blackhawks fandom, I won't say just Chicago, but Blackhawks fandom as a whole is very apparent, is very real. And because it's the dead dog days of summer when it comes to Chicago sports, it's going to be the buzz for at least probably the next week until the Bears start to kick off training camp and things start to really ramp up there for football season. It's really hard not to get excited for hockey season, Cowboy, and it's going to be here soon. September 29th will be here before we know it, and the Blackhawks take part in that opening day triple header as the last game on that docket against the Vegas Golden Knights out in Vegas. Again, Blackhawks are 3 teams home openers this year before they have their own home opener on Tuesday, October 6th against the St. Louis Blues at the United Center. From Blackhawks Cowboy and myself, Ron Luce, we appreciate everybody joining us. As always, check us out at Four Feathers Pod on the socials. Make sure you find Mr. Blackhawks Cowboy on the socials as well. You got a little at Cowboy NHL. Is that the new handle here?
Changed a little bit.
Okay. I like it. I like it a lot. New little tweak for our boy Blackhawks Cowboy. I am always loose on tap, and be sure to follow the rest of the gang as well. Of course, head over to ontapsportsnet.com and at ontapsportsnet on the socials. Be sure to check out the YouTube channel as well. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, hit that bell button. When all of our great shows, just like the Four Feathers podcast, go live on the platform. Once again, ontapsportsnet.com and at ontapsportsnet on the socials. Be sure to check out what is on tap in Chicago sports. Cowboy, this was fun. It's been a good day in Blackhawks fandom.
Great day.
We're going to ride this into the weekend because, as everybody knows here at Four Feathers, the weekend starts on Thursday.
Yep.
And showtime is back in the Windy City. Cowboy, what do you say? Let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.